So once a website is built, there's nothing more to do, right? You just let it run and fix it if it breaks. Unfortunately, the truth is something else entirely. Hi, I'm Mike Phillips. In this video, we're going to be discussing how to do something called a UX audit. We will discuss what it is, why it's important, 4 key areas that you should focus on, some pitfalls to avoid, and of course homework for you to practice on your own. Let's get started. At this point in the course, I'd hope that the importance of UX would be well understood. It's the bread and butter of a website experience. If a user's experience is not pleasant, engaging, meeting them where they're at, they're going to bounce. They'll leave within seconds or less of arriving on your site. And the thing about UX is that it is not a static target. It's a moving target that you constantly have to reevaluate how you are approaching what your users need, answering the questions that your visitors have in a way that give them a positive and engaging experience while consuming your content. Because digital content consumption evolves as we become more comfortable with technology, as technology changes, and as generations turn over. UX is an evolving thing. So how do we keep up with changing trends and preferences? By auditing our UX in our content and on our sites to make sure that we are staying abreast with the way our users want to experience the content. Auditing the UX of your content is so much more than simply checking or updating the structure and the wording of the way you present your content. It is far more global and holistic of a concept. And that means that an audit must branch out far beyond simply what is within any given piece of content. So how do we get a UX audit done right? There are 4 key areas I recommend that you focus on. The first area is doing a competitor website audit. It may be counterintuitive, but yes, checking and evaluating a competitor's site for user experience can help bring you insight to look at your own. Why? Because when we are close to something that is created, when we ourselves are the ones that create it, we begin to have rosy glasses. We see it with a passion and an attachment because we are the ones who made it. But in the end, unless we ourselves are the exact customer we are writing for, we need to make sure we can look at things through an impartial lens. This is where a competitor site audit comes into play. Being able to view a competitor site allows you to be far more critical, more dispassionate, and less biased. Look at the tactics your competitors are using. Are they the same as what you are doing? Are they different? If they're the same, are they doing a better or worse job? If they're different, should you be incorporating those techniques? Or are they different but not important? These are the types of questions that are easier to ask when you are doing a comparison. Make sure you put like content side by side between what a competitor's page shows and what yours does, and be able to view them against one another. This will bring objectivity into your evaluation. The most important things that you should be looking for are ease of navigation, load times, and fundamental structure. As you may know, no 2 SEO specialists will prepare a piece of content the same way. Consider your competitor's page as a collaborator with a window into what your competitive market is doing. Use any differences in approach as a chance to question the way that you are approaching UX. And be willing to approach things with a testing mindset. If there are things on your competitor's site that you're not quite confident that you want to incorporate, consider doing a traffic split and A/B test. Google Optimize is an excellent tool for this kind of project. The second area I'd like you to focus on is a lead conversion audit. Ultimately, the content that we create in SEO is meant to drive new business. We need to convert from visitor to prospect. To analyze this, consider an entire funnel that leads from an unaware, passive discovery to an active, declared intent to buy. Passive discovery comes from long-tail keyword search. This is different than direct, brand-aware discovery, where people are searching for your company name in order to use Google as a shortcut to your site. These 2 categories of search traffic will show up in different stages of the buyer journey. Passive discovery is very early, top-of-funnel traffic, whereas brand-aware, high-intent searches are from customers farther down the buyer's journey. Being aware of where your traffic is coming from and which pages are most useful to each stage of the buyer's journey is a critical part of the UX audit. Nothing can hurt your user's experience more than content that doesn't meet them in the stage they're in. Make sure you're serving passive discovery and high-intent search traffic. Beyond measuring key usefulness, make sure that you update keywords, headings, and other structure within each useful piece of content so that the content is still matching the way buyers are searching for you. This audit involves looking at the types of queries that customers are using and making sure that those keywords are not only present, but being answered in the language they're using today. Just as trends can shift, so can the way we ask questions, the language we use to communicate them. And when that language shifts, we need to make sure that our content has those types of questions and those keywords present to provide the right answer and a quality experience. The third area of a holistic UX audit involves checking social media. Yes, social media. It's off-site content. It is not indexed by search usually. But when it comes to a user experience, oftentimes viewers of your website content will also be familiar with your social media content. A great source of friction, which is a terrible user experience, is when the language and the topics that you discuss do not align between the different channels that your brand exists. If you use one tone on social media and an entirely different tone in your content, if you are speaking in a certain voice on social media and a different voice on your website, if you are taking a certain stance on social media and taking a different stance in the content on your website, this will create friction. And as we've mentioned before, visitors to your site don't have time to make sense of discrepancies like this. They have options, and that option may not be you. Some simple things to check is to make sure you have consistent naming across your social media accounts. Oftentimes, different departments in an organization can claim different social profiles. Let's make sure that your company is listed as Acme Inc., not just Acme, in all places. Let's also make sure that the profile photo, the logos, the colors are consistent. And let's make sure that the taglines and fundamental text and copy that are part of introducing what your company is and what it's about are the same. With these consistencies aligned, it creates a smooth transition wherever your traffic comes from, and however convoluted and twisted and meandering the buyer's journey may be. Yes, they might arrive at your site through a well-indexed blog post, but there's probably a share button on that blog post. So they might leave to social media, and then they may come back later the next time you share a different blog post on that feed. This back and forth experience is why you need a consistency between social media and your website to have a smooth and positive user experience. The fourth and final area I want you to focus on is a general SEO audit. In this focus, we're going to look at fundamental performance that can undermine or support the user experience. Fundamental aspects of user experience can be gauged through your website's performance. So this general audit is going to measure things like loading speed. If your web pages load slow, your UX will be poor, even if you have consistency, even if you have a good answer to their question. It's widely accepted that websites lose people after only 2 seconds of load time. It may not seem that long to talk about, but it's an eternity when you're eager for an answer with an entire internet full of answers. 2 seconds is not a long time to talk about, but it's an eternity when you're eager for an answer and you have an entire internet full of options. Load speed is important to check frequently. Changes in your CMS, in the amount of content and assets that are loaded into your site can all affect performance incrementally over time. You may not notice changes at first, but frequently and regularly inspecting load time allows you to make sure that it doesn't creep up into a bad range. So we've talked about 4 key areas to focus on. I want to also address a few pitfalls that are important to avoid. The first pitfall of failing to audit your UX is simply that Google could unindex your site. Most ranking and indexing nowadays is heavily weighted against user experience. Why? Because the quality of Google's service, of their ability to connect queries to answers, depends on the quality of the experience that the visitor gets after they pursue one of the suggested answers. It is in Google's best interest to serve up only top UX experience. And that means you need to make sure that your UX is constantly refreshed and meets the standards of today. The second pitfall is that you will lose revenue. It does not matter how strong of a solution you have, how quality of a product, or how cheap of a price that you're offering. If the user experience of your content is low, you will lose potential customers. In fact, many customers would rather buy from a more positive experience. Because customers have more options than they have time, they would be willing to select a more positive experience over an ideal product. This is how important UX is. It's not just a question of acquiring new visitors. It's a question of converting those visitors to customers. Now that you know the pitfalls to avoid and some areas to focus on to execute UX audits well, let's give you a homework assignment to practice what you've learned. Google Lighthouse is a free UX audit tool available to everyone. It's available as a Chrome extension or a developer tool, and this gives you the chance to measure your site's performance. The best part is Lighthouse can be used on any publicly available website, including your competitors. Use this as a means to benchmark your content against a competitor's. Lighthouse helps you measure UX in 5 key areas. It helps you measure performance and accessibility. It checks best practices and SEO implementation. And lastly, it will evaluate qualification as a progressive web application. All 5 of these areas are part of how Google measures the quality of the user experience on your site. Lighthouse will make recommendations for improvement in each of these 5 areas. You should take those tips and implement them. This is an amazing tool considering it's completely free to use. You've reached the end of this lesson. We've covered why a UX audit is so important, 4 key areas for you to focus on in your audit, pitfalls to avoid, and a homework for you to make progress on what you've learned. Thank you so much for learning with me. I'm Mike Phillips, and remember, UX is about so much more than just acquiring new visitors. It's about converting them to customers too.